Okie doke. So last time we were towards the end, we were looking at bodhichitta, so the second of the three principles of the path. And towards the end, just sort of very briefly, a summary of the six perfections. And so, as Shanti Davis said in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, that the previous five perfections were taught for the purpose of generating the correct view, the purpose of wisdom, cultivating the correct view. So this is the third principle of the path. And I like the term the correct view, because if you look at Lama Tsong Khapa's great treatise on the path to enlightenment, that third volume, the special insight section, where he looks at all the views that are not quite complete. And so not being quite complete, you don't therefore attain complete full enlightenment. So this is with the most profound view, as also Lama Tsong Khapa wrote in terms of in praise of dependent arising, or in praise of the Buddha, for uniquely teaching the philosophical view of dependent arising. So two aspects of the Buddha's teachings come down to two things, isn't it? It's to do no harm, or as the Buddha said, at least do no harm, generate virtuous states of mind and benefit others. So that's three practices of morality, ethics. And so this time we're investigating the third principal aspect, the correct view of emptiness and dependent arising. Two sides of the one coin. So the verses in here, and I have brought my most current FP&T version, which is the one I prefer the translation of, but and so I can reference that. So this is covered in verses 9 to 13. So if you look at the bottom of page 144 in the Gold Book, well, first of all, to before we go into detail, first of all, to say the structure remains the same as all the other, looking at renunciation and looking at, well, the same, actually, it's a little bit more detailed. So it has those three aspects of why do you need the correct view, just like why do you need to cultivate bodhicitta, why do you need to cultivate the mind, renunciation, the mind of definite emergence. So similarly, verse 9 looks at what we'll go in detail. Why do you need the correct view? And then what is the correct view? So identifying the correct view, what that means. And then that's verse 10. And then verse 11, 12, 13, instructions on how to complete the analysis of the correct view. And so, like, similarly with bodhicitta and renunciation, how do you know when your analysis is still incomplete? In other words, you haven't yet realized, even conceptually, the correct view. And then how to know when your analysis is complete. So that's very similar in the structure. And what Lama Tsong Khapa adds in here is the unique teaching of the middle way consequence school, the Prasangika Madhyamika view, the most subtle view of dependent arising, the most complete view that will get you towards enlightenment. Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. So first of all, verse 9, why we need the correct view. If you do not have the wisdom, realize, so it's right down the bottom, realizing the way things are, even though you have developed the thought definitely to leave cyclic existence, so definite emergence, renunciation, as well as the altruistic intention, bodhicitta, the root of cyclic existence cannot be cut if you do not have the wisdom, realizing the way things are. The root of cyclic existence cannot be cut. therefore work at the means of realizing dependent arising. So why we need the correct view is a wrong understanding of emptiness. What would be a wrong understanding of emptiness? Things don't exist at all. Emptiness means void, means nothing. I don't exist, nothing exists. This we call nihilism, right? As Lama Tsong Khapa said, that's over-negating. Or as we say, throw the baby out with the bathwater, chuck everything out. So you can fall into one of these two extremes, through the misunderstanding of emptiness, which is the extreme, as we've just said, of nihilism, annihilation, so forth, whatever label we want to use. Or the extreme of permanence, or superimposition, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. We elaborate on top of what is there, what isn't there. What are we elaborating on top? Permanence. We'll be together forever. How many times has that not worked? But we get down to the essence of it here, this extreme of permanence or superimposition. So that example of, like, you see someone walking down the street and you eliminate everything else other than that person in your mind without even realizing. And of course, your eyes perceive what? Color and shape. So we recognize, say, a human being. And then we recognize, say, male, female, or maybe we don't, they're gender fluid. We recognize, oh, that's my friend, so-and-so. And so we go towards them. As soon as we have that label, my friend so-and-so, that's when we place that permanence upon this image that we have of my friend. So what we're perceiving is via that image, not actually as they're appearing to you. So I'll give one example, not exactly as they're appearing to you. So one time when Venerable Rabina was some years ago, was arriving in the Blue Mountains to teach, she got out of the car and the resident director greeted her, and blah, 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 blah. She happened to be a nun. I don't know if that made the difference to these comments. So, and then I said to her, where have you gone? Like, she had lost so much weight. It's like, what's happened? And she turned to the director and said, she noticed, you didn't. Because we have our image of someone, right? And then we haven't updated it. Of course, she was also the one responsible to welcome her, so she was on welcoming mode, and I was just there for the ride. So maybe I could just relax and observe, but just notice how we do this sort of thing ourselves, with friends, with enemies, with anybody. So I'll give you another example, more very, very mundane example. Years ago, I was working in this, and where I was working was near Central Station in Sydney. And one day we decided, some of us decided together. So I was working in the arts industry as a sort of national training body. And we were going that afternoon to have a meeting at the Australia Council. People who, I don't know if they still exist, gave the money for the arts. And so we were having a meeting there. And so we decided, that was near Central Station as well. And we decided to go to this place that I'm pretty sure is still there, a fish and chip shop opposite Central Station. Really daggy old fish and chip shop, you know the picture. We were a vegetarian. We go to the fish and chip shop. And we got there and the woman said, oh, we don't have any fish today. And we said, that's fine, we're vegetarian. So we'll just have chips and salad, right? She says, I've got lamb. And we said, no, we'll just have chips and salad. She says, what? You don't like my lamb? You think it's unclean? No. Just, we're vegetarian. Sounds like my big fat Greek wedding, doesn't it? Anyway, so while we were there, this was the real part of the story I wanted to say. There was an Aboriginal guy sitting there. So we were there working in a well-paid job and all of this, but we decided to go down to the Daggy fish and chip shop because none of us had ever been in there. And we never went there again. I don't think any of us ever went there again. So in our minds, when we're walking up to the Australia Council, we're not in our minds, we're chatting and saying, oh, that poor guy, blah, blah, blah. We walk into the Australia Council and he's sitting there on the couch, different context, ready to have a meeting as well. And so suddenly we had to say, oh, well, you made all these assumptions about this guy. You were there. Maybe he made assumptions about you, And so we do this. We make assumptions, don't we? So look at how we quickly jump to assumptions. Okay. So this reasoning of dependent arising says, therefore, work at the means of realizing dependent arising. And given that we don't yet have a direct perceptual realization of that, we look analytically. So the first time I was ever asked to give a talk on emptiness, I was very new to, I didn't feel confident. I went straight to Geshe Santa and said, do you want me to talk about emptiness, Geshe-la? What do I talk about? He said, talk about dependent arising. Because that's the flip side. Emptiness is the ultimate truth. Dependent arising is, we say, the conventional truth. And so the conventional truth is, let us say, a little bit more accessible for us to be able to use our analytical skills. Not only that, it was uniquely taught by the Buddha, and that by realizing dependent arising, you realize emptiness. That the two come together. So I'm jumping a bit ahead. So establishing dependent arising eliminates those two extremes of permanence or eternalism or stereotyping or whatever label the superimposition takes, and the nihilism, I always think of Jean-Paul Sartre. Yeah, in that category. I have to go back to what he actually said because, I was a teenager when I last read Jean-Paul Sartre, I'm pretty sure, in French, in my French classes. So I've got a very simplistic view, but I always think of that in terms of nihilism. Anyway, dependent, what does that mean? It means not independent. It means that things depend on other things. So that eliminates, in general, the extreme of permanence. And arising means something exists. It comes into existence. So anything that comes into existence, we generally say arises, abide for however long time, however many years we stay alive. We can say arose, were born, or at least were conceived, because in the Buddhist framework, life starts at conception. Not just the Buddhist framework, I think. Arising means something is not non-existence. That's a double negative. And there's a lot of those when you do Buddhist philosophy. Not non-existent. In other words, it exists. And that eliminates the extreme of nihilism. Okay. So that's in general. We'll get to a more subtler view at the end of this. So this, because the reasoning of dependent arising is able to eliminate the two extremes, hence we have the middle way view, right? It's not at either of the extremes, middle way view. It's because it's able to eliminate both of those, it's said to be the king of reasonings. King of reasonings means at the time the kings were the most powerful people in the land. And so it's the most powerful reasoning to get to dependent arising. So other reasonings are not able to totally eliminate these two extremes at the same time. At the same time. So what are the three levels of dependent arising? I'm hearing a void. I'm not hearing a, I'm hearing an absence of response. Okay, dependent on causes and conditions, dependent on its parts, and dependent on conceptualization, labeling, imputation, designation, naming things. As soon as we name things, there's always one of the sort of topics that loves to be debated here is, so the baby's born and not yet named, right? And then subsequently gets labeled John. Did John exist before John, when it was still baby X or whatever? Did John exist? Clearly not. There you go. Clearly not. Said with great confidence.
The baby existed, but the baby didn't exist as John.
The baby didn't exist as John. Yeah. And as soon as we label John, then we have our generic image of Johns, isn't it? No, but it's almost like we've got this composite of every John we've ever known, or maybe a particular John or whatever. So it gets like put in the John category. Yeah, regardless, right? So a lot comes along with that. So that's the three levels, and it's that most subtle level that we have to get to. So when we say everything is dependent on causes and conditions, what we're talking about is impermanent phenomena, which is mostly everything, functioning phenomena, things that arise, abide, and dissolve. So looking at how this is presented in the Lam Rim section of the Guru Puja. I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of wisdom through the space-like yoga of single-minded placement upon ultimate truth. So having that mind of calm abiding, of concentration, of placement meditation, conjoined with the pliancy and great bliss induced by the discriminating wisdom, analyzing suchness, analyzing emptiness, analyzing the truth, the ultimate nature of everything. So here we have this space-like single-pointed placement on ultimate truth, which is what? The absence of existing truly out there, independently, on its own side, separate to me, who's perceiving it, whatever it is, whatever object it is, conjoined with the pliancy and great bliss. The pliancy actually comes along at higher levels of, when you attain shamatha, calm abiding, those 9 levels, which one day are going to appear on that wall. They're not going to happen magically. We've got to make it happen. At the moment, there's an absence of the 9 stages of meditation on that wall. Why is there an absence? Because I know it was instruction to put on that. So what I perceive is an absence of that. But otherwise, you might just say there's a cupboard in the television screen. Okay. 106. I seek your blessings to complete the perfection of wisdom through the space-like yoga of single-minded placement upon ultimate truth, conjoined with the pliancy and great bliss induced by discriminating wisdom, analyzing satna. When it says conjoined, it's saying in the one mind. So what we do currently when we're meditating on emptiness, we do the analytical thing, and then when we get a taste, we stabilize for as long as that feeling is, to let that deepen in our experience. And then when that the power strength of that goes, we continue to analyze. So we toggle backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, until we get to this point where the it's not two minds, it's one mind. It rises in the one mind. Okay, at the moment we're not there yet. And as Lama Tsong Khapa said separately in the Foundation of All Good Qualities, by pacifying distractions to wrong objects. I think when I first started to meditate, it was one of those. No, when I first started to meditate, I had a mantra to meditate. That was TM. But then people used to love meditating on a flickering candle flame, looking out there at a flickering candle flame. That's a distraction to wrong objects. I mean, I tried to look at the blue light right in the middle. I didn't even really see a blue light right in the middle, but anyway, concentrate it where it was stillest. But still, what's it doing? Flickering your mind with the flickering of the candle flame. And we've got enough flickering as it is, distractions. So we have to be very clear about what is a wrong object. Pacifying distractions to wrong objects, of course, Lama Tsong Khapa is also referring to, well, that is one of it. It's using the sense consciousness, perceiving a flickering candle. So any distraction by the sense consciousnesses to anything, the sound of the fans, whatever, is a wrong object. Engagement with the wrong. And we do that without even realizing. We're doing it 24/7, like, dislike, oh, nice sound, oh, that smells nice, and etc., etc. We go on and on and on. So pacifying all of that through the practice of calm abiding, placement meditation, shamatha meditation, shine, it's called all these things. And correctly analysing the meaning of reality. So that's what we've got to look through here, how to correctly analyse the meaning of reality. Please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path, so same as here, of calm abiding and special insight. So on the one mind, not toggling back and forth. Okay, so that's our way through to realising the correct view. Okay. So how do we do this? How do we do it? Well, obviously, as it says, we use analysis. So there are a number of different analyses. So in the different tenets, the different schools, it's analysing, well, we all agree on analysing the self of person. This I, precious I, me, see, I puff, me, that doesn't exist, but it's how we engage with everything as if this I does exist permanently from its own side. It's not there. Intellectually, we know it's not there, but still the way our mode of behavior acts, gripping onto this, grasping onto this self which isn't there, which is the root ignorance, innate. We're born with it. Watch when a baby comes out. Remember, I was around, not exactly at the time of birth, but very not long afterwards, of one set of twins in my family. And you definitely saw that these are two distinct entities. They're very different, right? Their sense of self, very, very different and established. So it's quite, when you see it in twins, okay, they weren't, what do you call it? Identical twins. Well, one was male, female, and very different, actually, looks, very different looks. One's blonde, one's dark hair, blah, blah, blah. And yet you can see that having all the conditions to be born from mum and dad, same, but they brought their own self-identity with them. So from past lives, we know this, right? So the first thing that we analyze is, what is it we're actually, is the object of our meditation? What is it we're actually refuting when we talk about refuting this self, or that I hold on to, that I have my own image of, etc., etc. As soon as we've got an image of that, it's a permanent image. Of course, we update it from time to time. When I was 7 years old, different to now. I wasn't a Buddhist now, etc., etc. We update our self-generic image. So the first thing is that we identify what is to be negated. We're all here. We're not negating. We're not being nihilistic. We're not saying, oh, there's nobody here. I'm relieved, because otherwise I'm talking to myself. I think that's the definition of sanity. That's a worry, because I do talk to myself. In any case, so Shantideva said, without contacting the true existence which the mind has projected, the true existence of me, the mind has projected, so not the conventional existence projected by mum and dad and my own mind coming in there, but the one that the mind projects onto this set of aggregates. So without contacting the true existence of that mind, one will not apprehend its true non-existence. So the thing to be refuted is what? The true existence of this self I grasp onto, gets upset if you blame me. So, I love you. We always go here, don't we? We don't go to the, which side? Left. Physical heart, do we? We go here. Because they say, oh, well, it's a heart. Just look at, I was in the shops the other day and there were so many Valentine's Day things, hearts and hearts and hearts and hearts and hearts. But we point here, chitta, as we said with bodhichitta, awakening mind, chitta being the mind of enlightenment. Bodhi. Okay. So we have to identify it correctly so that we don't either over negate and throw everything out, which is a nihilistic view, or under negate. In other words, don't do enough, don't complete the analysis. So Papanka Rinpoche said, while you're looking exactly how the I instinctively appears to you, the I presents itself in many different ways. What are some of the ways that I presents itself? Well, sometimes we connect it with the body or even parts of the body, sometimes with the mind or even parts of my mind, the mind. So the body and mind, we say, are the basis of imputing an I, person, the imputed phenomenon, and they all sort of merge into body, mind, person, I. But it seems to be, it's something more than just an idea. It appears to be something self-contained, distinct from its own side. Think about, we know that there's a continuity of mental consciousness. So we, as Buddhists, accept the existence of future lives. But what do you see when you project yourself into a future life? Or should I say, who do you see? Isn't it this me of this life? Isn't it? Maybe not. But we feel whatever it is, maybe we say, no. I think of a very subtle level of mind that is permanent. So it's a good thing to check up. So what this I that's not part of body and mind, that's merely labeled on this body-mind continuum, the one that's on top of that. So when you realize that it's merely labeled on top of this body and mind, that's when you have identified the object of negation, the self of person, object of negation, right? So having done that, so this is a 4-point analysis. Having done that, then you establish the possibilities. Well, if it does exist inherently, permanently, from its own side, as I hold it to be, then it has to exist in either of two ways, isn't it? One is either it's together with the aggregates, the same as the aggregates, or it's separate from that. It's something on top, because we do have this sense of my body, my mind, my this, my that, every bit of piece of it. Okay, so then we do all the analyses around this. Is it one body? And we have all these meditations on parts of the body. And sorry, I'm jumping ahead. This is only the second point. Second point is saying it has to be either the same as the aggregates, body, mind, or separate from that. Is there a third possibility? What do you reckon? Together? Separate? Is there a third possibility? Different from. Like a possessor of. Okay. Once you realize the answer is no, you realize if it's neither of these two, it can't exist inherently, truly, from its own side. And then Pabonka Rinpoche says, then you meditate on this point, not for a day or two, not for a week, but until you gain unshakable conviction in this point. And you might say, okay, well, what's next? I've already got unshakable conviction that it doesn't exist like that. Come on, move on. You know, heard this before, move on. And so having analyzed that, then we examine both of these. The possibility, it exists one with the aggregates. So how many aggregates do we have? 5. Form, as it said in the Heart Sutra, form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. Form, body, feeling, sensation. Discrimination, being able to discriminate this from that, perception, in other words, perception. Compositional factors is all the other mental factors, and we study those, have studied those, will study those, all the different, you know, virtuous, non-virtuous, the different omnipresent mental factors, the fluctuating ones, and so forth. So or the different mental states, we could say, moments of mind. So we study all that. So, and consciousnesses, mental consciousness, the sense consciousness, and so. So in other words, if it's the same with all of that, there's a lot of, has to be a lot of I's, me's, if it's identical. So at least you've got 5, because you've got 5 aggregates, 5 me's. And then as Chandrakirti said, if the aggregates were the self, it follows, as they are many, the self too would be multiple. Me, 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 me. We might say that a lot, but we're not thinking of different me's. We're thinking of the same me, isn't it? But we know that this is a false understanding. And if it was the same, why would we have all these different labels of the aggregates, the parts of the body, and so forth, the parts of the mind? Why not just, it'd just be labeled one thing, because everything would be the same. So these are different arguments that are used. And then if we're thinking of it existing other than, well, if it's not in here somewhere, and we do, this is one of the main analyses that we do. But if it's not existing, all right, if unfindable, well, I didn't find it there, better look, is it outside of that? Is it different to this body mind? I do say my, this, my, that, my, everything. So in the Root of Wisdom, Nagarjuna said, if they were shown to be naturally separate, it would be possible to perceive this I, this me, without there being any aggregates. Right? So you could perceive it without there being any of it. Like some separate little eye bubble floating around in space. Not quite sure how that would work. So this example that's used, you have a group of a goat, a sheep, and a bull. And you're looking for the bull. You eliminate the goat, you eliminate the sheep, and then the bull remains. So this is the sort of analysis that we do. We eliminate everything that's not that, to be able to identify that. So if we eliminate all of the aggregates, what are we left with? If it were not, as Nagarjuna said, if it were different from the aggregates, it wouldn't have the characteristics of the aggregates, and yet we do perceive that. And then again, analysis followed by space-like meditation on emptiness. And in post-meditation, in other words, the rest of our lives, to have the attitude that things are like an illusion. So if you've been in the, anyone who's had the experience of being in teachings with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, having had the great fortune to have done that, when with Rinpoche at the beginning of teachings, reciting from the prayers before teachings, the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, there's the one verse that Rinpoche will always pause. You know the verse? Kamama River. Yes. Like an illusion means a dewdrop, a water bubble, flash of lightning. See all conditioned things like that. So this is what it's saying here, to see it as an illusion, to see that, not to see it like it's all a mirage, it's not like that, but how it appears is the illusion, that it doesn't exist as it appears. It does appear to exist truly out there, independent from me. It does exist, but it doesn't exist in the way it is. It appears to be permanent. So these flowers have been here for a very long time because they're fake flowers. Well, I don't know, non-growing flowers. They don't wilt, right? So I might have a perception this is a permanent flower because it's been there a pretty long time. So it looks pretty permanent to me. And of course, this is what we do all the time, but I know it's not permanent. But we do that so subtly, at a very subtle level, it's changing moment to moment. Can I perceive that change? Absolutely not. Yes. It's degenerating, right? It's doing it extremely slowly, which we're very relieved by because they can sit there for longer. We don't have to buy new one. But, you know, I just want to say on that, I don't know if these are the plastic or the silky variety, but Lama Tsong Rinpoche, when he discovered plastic flowers, thought it was the best thing. It was at the house in Washington State. When it snows, he said, you can still have flowers. You just plant them in the snow. Very creative, isn't it? I wasn't there. I was at the house in Aptos, which is now sold. See, Rinpoche's house in Aptos, I've got still an image in my mind, but it's no longer Rinpoche's house. It's been sold. It's, you know, somebody else's house.
Can I just ask what verse that was that you quoted?
I
know that to teach.
Oh, the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. So it's the praise, I think, oh, actually, it should be in the Gold Book. Prayers before teachings. Prayers. Oh, no. Yes, Mahayana prayers before teaching, 71. I used to know exactly the page because we used this for so many years. 75, 76, the top verse there, a star, a visual aberration, which we normally think of as a mirage, let's say, you know, we see that all the time. And we know when we see a mirage, like, you know, in this hot weather, when you see that shimmering on the road of the heat, and it looks like, you know, sort of a bit fluid looking, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, like a magical illusion or so forth, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream. We know when we wake up that it was a mere dream. It wasn't real, felt real. That's a very good one to meditate on. A flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned phenomena as such, things as such. So these can be objects for us to analyze and realize their lack of inherent existence, that they don't exist as they appear. And they're using conventional ones like you said, the reflection of a moon in a still lake, or a reflection of our face in a mirror, etc., etc. So those we get those analogies. And so that can set us on the right track by using those as objects of meditation. So then identifying the correct view whoever seeing the cause and effect, so 145, whoever seeing the cause and effect of all phenomena of cyclic existence and nirvana as infallible. So why has it got both cyclic existence of both nirvana, cyclic existence and nirvana? Because they're both dependent arisings, and that attaining nirvana, you've purified the afflictive obscurations, but you still have the imprints of the knowledge obscurations or obscurations to omniscience, that by then going on the bodhisattva path, you know, that we eliminate those, particularly, you know, the most subtle view of you know, the practice of the six perfections, realizing the most subtle view of the wisdom, realizing emptiness, and then completing the tantric generation stage and completion stage. Okay. Thoroughly destroys a mode of apprehension of these objects as inherently existent. So thoroughly destroy our way of perceiving those things as truly existing out there from its own side by way of its own characteristics, existing, substantially existing, self-sufficiently, existing permanently, existing independently. So once you realize that, you've entered the path pleasing to the Buddhas. So you're on the right track, right? Basically what it's saying here. And so we have this 4-point analysis, and then we have this 7-fold analysis. So the 4-point analysis, the 5-point analysis, which from Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way, and then Chandrakirti added on 2 more points. So not being the aggregates, similar here, not being the same as the aggregates, not being other than the aggregates, not being the base of the aggregates, the base to be imputed the aggregates upon. And examples like a bowl, like a container for yogurt, for example. So the container, the thing that is suitable to be labelled the aggregates upon, not depending on the aggregates. In one example given here is like a lion depends on the forest. So we would have to not depend on parents, on the air, on food, on water, on etc. Anything. Not possessing the aggregates, in other words, sense of ownership. So that's what he's added on there. That, you know, if not that, externally, you know, I'm the possessor of these aggregates, just like you might own a house or a car or so you own, and you know that would be silly. And then Chandrakirti added 2 more, not being the shape, the form of the aggregates. You know, as we have many, what do we call them? Symbols. You know, the symbols for the male toilet, the symbols for the female toilet, symbols for this and that, isn't it? The shape of. They're not always the shape of. Sometimes they're very weird things. But in general, we agree that that shape equals female and that shape equals male. I've got a photo somewhere, which I can't find right at the moment. When I first saw it in San Francisco, this was decades ago, the gender, non-gender specific or whatever bathroom had all those different. Oh, that's right. Skirt on that side and leg on that side. That's what it was. Trouser, I guess, skirt and trousers. So we impute that skirt and trousers on a shape. But that, yeah, that person doesn't look like that. Just saying. Yeah. And not being the collection of the aggregates or composite of the aggregates. And this is where I like, you know, that ad from a long time. I wish I had recorded it at the time, because I don't think this ad is around anymore. I wouldn't know, actually. The one for the car, where you see all these like nuts and bolts and springs and tires and all sorts of things rolling off the production line. And at which point does that become a car? So this is one of the things when we're looking at phenomena. Lama Tsong Khapa's example was a chariot. When is a chariot not a chariot? And so you dissect, you take all the parts away, and, you know, I know at Vajrayana Institute, we spent years looking out the window when we were having our discussion group, looking at cars. But it is a good thing to do. Shopping, absolutely. Shopping at IKEA. Yeah, how's this going to end up as that? I know. IKEA's got it nailed, haven't they? They really have it nailed. Okay. All right. So then how do you know when your analysis is still incomplete? Is verse 11. As long as the two realizations of appearances, the infallibility of dependent arising and realization of emptiness, the non-assertion of inherent existence, are seen to be separate. So we've got, there is still no realization of the thought of Shakyamuni Buddha. So we still are not there yet. And then how this is presented in the Lamrim. The illusion-like practice of emptiness during post-meditations is what we're talking about. Go to IKEA, happily. I seek your blessings to perfect the samadhi on illusion, using all those examples, the mirage, the reflection on the moon of a still lake, all these examples that we get on illusion, realizing how it's an illusion, illusory, how all outer phenomena and inner phenomena out there in here lack true existence. So this self I grab onto, I know it doesn't exist truly on any atom of body, mind, etc. And yet I still have a very strong sense of this I. Lack true existence, but still appear like an illusion, a dream, image on a still lake. So this is another approach then in meditation to go through this. And as the Panchen Lama, actually the fourth Panchen Lama, but Thubten Chökyi who composed the Guru Puja, he said, so he was actually the fourth Panchen Lama, but he's often attributed as being the first. He was a teacher of the fifth Dalai Lama, and composed a famous Lamrim text, The Bliss Leading to Omniscience. He said, the way things now present themselves to us ordinary beings is nothing but the way the objects to be refuted through logic would appear to us. Right? So we've gone through a couple of examples of doing that analysis, 4 point, 5 point, 7 point. All consciousnesses within the mind stream of ordinary beings have been affected by ignorance. Because of this, any object that appears to us seems to be true, truly existent from its own side, because we had this innate ignorance grasping at this permanent self, grasping at permanent existence, grasping at permanence. So we're confused. One other Marikpa and one other translation, confusion. We're confused. We're deeply confused. So when we do these analyses, the non-finding of the person in any of the ways by using any of the reasonings proves the non-inherent existence of the person, not the non-existence of the person. It proves it doesn't exist inherently, truly, which is the good news, because if it did, what would be the consequence? A consequence, one of the consequences. No change. If we can't change, what are we doing here? Think about it. Everything. It's just, we know that's not how things exist. So in ascertaining the non-existence of a self, that's jumping ahead. Rinpoche was a student of Milarepa. So he said, so he traveled to India and brought back the profound teachings on the perfection of wisdom sutras that then were incorporated to many, all the lineages basically in Tibet. And at the end of his life achieved rainbow body. He said, I have found the transcendental, we might say ultimate truth, he said transcendental, in the world. So he's not saying in heaven, not saying in nirvana. He said in the world. So this is the beauty of our precious human rebirth. Now delusions have no hold on my mind, no hold on the mind. They don't grab the mind. They don't cognitively fuse with the mind. Right? You realize it's an illusion. You realize it's a reflection. You realize it's ephemeral. You realize it's subject to change. You realize it's impermanent. As my dear former LPP, prison chaplain friend in Victoria, when I was driving around with her, she said, this is what she does, driving around, looking at everything. Everything's impermanent. Everything's changing. And given that she was driving the same route a lot of the time, she probably observed change over time every time she went. And she knew exactly the time of day to leave and when to stop for breakfast and where all the toilets were along the way. But what happened if they weren't there one day? You'd experience the absence of toilet. It would have disastrous consequences. But it happens, right? And realizing that everything's in a constant state of flux, of change, and being okay with that. It was the first and last teaching of the Buddha. And yet we're not okay with it. It's like, this is the most important, and don't forget this after I'm gone. Okay. So that's how we know when it's not complete. How do you know when it is complete? What we want to know. When the two realizations, so here we're looking at the two realizations being emptiness and dependent arising, exist simultaneously without alternation. And when from seeing dependent arising as infallible, definite knowledge destroys the mode of apprehension, how we perceive, of the conception of inherent existence. In other words, it destroys our believing things as inherently existent, separately, permanently, self-sufficiently, unitary, independent, so forth. Then the analysis of the view of emptiness is complete. So this, what does it mean? So I'm going to refer to this other translation that I feel more comfortable with. Verse 12. If these two realizations are happening simultaneously without alternation, when these, yes, well, that's the same as the first line. What does it mean without alternation? So Lama Tsong Khapa, the commentary on the Three Principal Teachings of Lama Tsong Khapa by Pabongka Rinpoche says, first, the fact that everything that about the way things work, about our virtue, about our non-virtue, about karma, is perfectly proper, despite the fact that no single object is anything more than mere labels, just names. So it's proper, in other words, it's functioning, even though it's merely labeled. So we talk about how we validate things conventionally in the world. So the object is, say, it says renowned, but accepted, shall we say, conventionally. Conventionally, we'll accept this is a computer. Conventionally, we accept this is flowers. Conventionally, we accept it's vase, etc., etc. We accept that. We all agree, right? And there's no contradiction by a conventional valid existence. Like there's nobody who's going to refute that and say, actually, I think we've got it wrong. You know, scientists are in the that's their profession. Prove things right, chuck it out if it's wrong. So I think, you know, having that, and the Buddha was a scientist of the mind, scientist of reality. It's just like, as the Buddha said, if you find anything I said, if you can prove it wrong, chuck it out, no problem. Because he was only interested in the truth, not you've got to believe because I said so. In fact, he said opposite, right? So this is the scientific approach. So here we're looking that things still validly exist, function, and so forth. The Dalai Lama said, if things did not exist, they could not affect us, but pain and pleasure do exist. When with respect to any phenomenon, the object designated, labelled, is sought, it is not found in the place where it was thought to exist. However, that it is non-existent, and we've got to say ultimately, because what does it say in the Heart Sutra? No form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. They don't exist. But it's not saying that. It's saying ultimately, it's emptiness of existing in the way we perceive it to exist. Therefore, since it is the case that phenomena being sought certainly exist, but not found under analysis, here meaning analysis of the ultimate nature, it can be concluded that it's not established under its own power. In other words, from its own side out there. I've changed my view about the Hadron Collider, or Hadron Collider, I always get the name wrong, because it's doing really good things. I used to think it was just looking for the God particle. But then I read more and thought, no, that's my ignorance, that's my imputation. So it's doing good things. So it's not a waste of money, apparently. Anyway, so I just thought I'd correct that. I had to check up. So it does exist through the force of other conditions. I mean, this is the first level of dependent arising, causes and conditions. So what are these conditions? And at the most subtle level, what are the conditions? Conceptual consciousnesses that designate, label, impute phenomena, right? So thus, it's inevitably established that phenomena exist through the force of or in dependence upon imputation by conceptuality. Oh, sorry, I didn't get all three criteria. So that's the Dalai Lama. And there is no the third point, there's no contradiction from a valid cognition analysing the ultimate. Why is there no contradiction from a valid cognition of analysing the ultimate? A valid cognition analysing the ultimate. Why is there no contradiction? Because it's not the object of analysis. So analysing the ultimate, you're not analysing conventional truth, conventional existence, you're analysing the ultimate nature. Its ultimate nature. We could say because it conventionally exists, it can't exist inherently, truly, from its own side. It would be a contradiction. Either it has to be dependent or independent. No third way to exist. But of course, as Buddha said, you check up for yourself. So therefore, also when we're doing this analysis, when we try to seek under analysis the thing that with that label we find only its emptiness of inherent existence. So we could say its ultimate nature and its conventional nature exist at this, like arise on the object at the same time, these flowers, this flower. So it did come into existence. It was made, it was put together, it's dependent on its parts, and it's merely labeled yellow rose. It can be merely labeled fake yellow rose, it can be merely labeled whatever. Flower. It's merely labeled that. But it's an accepted, nobody's going to refute that that's what it is. Accepted by valid cognition, it's not contradicted by that. But analysing its ultimate nature is analysing what? The emptiness of its inherent existence. In other words, it doesn't exist independently. In fact, it won't stand up independently. I'll drop it down. It doesn't exist in the way I perceive it to exist. Who would contradict this being a yellow rose? I mean, I don't mean any of us here. An ant might. That's a colourblind person. Yeah. I mean, it could be contradicted, even conventionally. What we're talking about, its ultimate nature is it doesn't exist independently out there from its own side. It's how we perceive it. And one day we'll come back and we'll be gone. Maybe we'll be gone because someone chucked it out. Or maybe, I'm not saying chuck it out, by the way. Maybe it'll be gone because somehow its impermanent nature becomes very apparent. Okay. There's not, so when we analyse and say there's not one single atom of natural existence, even in that, not one single atom of any object. So we can analyse down to atoms, subatomic particles, and keep analysing beyond and so when we look at the lower schools, for example, in the Hinayana schools, there is a sense of there's got to be something there from its own side. So they would assert partless particles. We would not assert partless particles. Why not? What reasoning could you use to refute a partless particle? Now, partless particle, it means it's so teeny tiny that it, so this is the thing with that Higgs boson. That Higgs boson, I guess it's teeny tiny enough that they say that this Higgs boson, which I don't know if it exists or not, it's like the building block that mass is built around. So there's this grasping at the inherent existence, something. This is in the world today, 21st century. And what is that something? Anyway, I did ask, why is there no such partless particle? Top, bottom, size, direction. So it has parts. It has those parts. I mean, we can analyse it in that, right? So that's one way that we do analyse. And no matter how teeny, precisely. So it still has parts. There's no such partless particle of me, of anything else. But investigate for yourself. And then, how we know our analysis is complete. When the two realizations of emptiness and dependent arising exist simultaneously in one mind without alternation. So when you think of emptiness, you automatically see interdependence. You know, one phrase that's helpful with this is that because of emptiness, everything is possible. Because of emptiness of inherent existence, true existence, existing independently from its own side, everything is possible. Why? Because everything's dependent on causes and conditions, which themselves are dependent on causes and conditions, etc., etc. But that means everything's impermanent, subject to change. Everything changes. And because of change, everything is possible. So when you know it's complete, when you think of emptiness, you see interdependence. When you think of interdependence, you see emptiness. Again, Pabongko Rinpoche's commentary on this. Once you grasp the secret of interdependence, the meaning of emptiness comes in a flash. Comes in a flash. So here, one of the things that said, when you're getting close to this, say I'm analysing the emptiness of inherent existence of this self that I grab onto. In fact, when you're getting to that point, coming in a flash, there's two responses. One is bliss. We want that one. We talk about the bliss of emptiness. The state of nirvana is said to be a blissful state. What's the other one? Fear. So there are examples of grabbing at meditators in there, grabbing at themselves to make sure they're still there. And I had not the experience of that totally, and I certainly wasn't meditating. Or maybe I was. When I was doing the Feldenkrais training. And at the time I had the frozen shoulder. And then through the practices we were doing, which is a sort of body awareness thing, not mind awareness, body awareness. It's like my arm disappeared. Ever heard anyone say in meditation part of their body? I have. That they're concerned they've disappeared. What had disappeared, I realized afterwards, was the amount of muscular attention that I needed to say, my arm's there. It's a very interesting experience. But that's not this. This is not this, the realization of emptiness. So when we think about this, maybe we have to, at least I can read the last verse. Running out of time. But when we think of, we meditate on the dissolutions for the time of death, right? And indeed, when we do that first dissolution of the earth element, and we are aware of those sensations of the eyes going blurry, when we're tired and when we're falling asleep, and there might be a sense of heaviness or sinking and so forth. So here, what's the internal, let's say, hallucination? What's the inner image that arises then, inner experience? A mirage. So instead of thinking the vision is a mirage, think I am a mirage. Sense of I'm actually not this substantial entity, I'm a complete mirage. And if you start to, I'm billowing smoke within smoke, as you go through the different dissolutions, it's a very powerful way to try and get that taste. As Milarepa said, in horror, fear of death, I took to the mountains again and again. I meditated on the uncertainty of the hour of the time of death. Right? So that's what he meditated on, uncertainty of the hour, not the dissolutions. Capturing the fortress of the deathless, unending nature of mind. So uncertainty of the time of death, but the unending nature of mind. Now all fear of death is done, gone, over. So what we're saying is looking from different views, looking from different perspectives that are going to give us this taste that we can come to the experience of emptiness and interdependence. When you think of emptiness, think of interdependence. When you think of interdependence, you think of emptiness. But then we have the view, the unique Prasangika view in the next verse, verse 13. Further, the extreme of inherent existence is excluded by knowledge of its nature of appearances existing only as nominal designations. So here it's flipping the usual way that we normally would say appearance, because things appear, it eliminates the extreme of non-existence because things exist. But here Lama Tsong Khapa is saying it eliminates the extreme of existence, of permanence, that the phenomena exists inherently. By phenomena appearing, it proves they are not inherently existence. They can't stand alone with any objective existence apart from the mind labeling. So it's what it's saying. Mere nominal designation. It's mere designation. So without that labeling from the mind to which they appear, and the causes and conditions that cause them to appear and so forth, and the extreme of total non-existence is excluded by the knowledge of nature of emptiness, that is, the absence of inherent existence and not the absence of nominal existence, the absence of inherent, truly existent. So again, usually it says that emptiness eliminates the extreme of permanence, existence. But here Lama Tsong Khapa is saying it eliminates the extreme of non-existence. In other words, nihilism, that phenomena don't exist at all. And how do we do this? By identifying phenomena as lacking inherent existence. It proves they exist. For example, in order to talk about emptiness of something, that something that is the basis of emptiness must exist. In other words, the emptiness of the object arises at the same time as the object. There must be something there to refute the emptiness of that object. If within emptiness, the way of appearance and cause and effect is known, you will not be captivated by extreme views. You will not be captivated by permanence or nihilism. You will not be captivated. You won't be sucked in, hijacked, or captivated. What are some synonyms? You get what I mean? Yeah. Lured into the wrong understanding. So this is the way in which dependent arising is given as the king of reasonings, because it doesn't fall into either of the two extremes. And then, this is the verse I always look forward to. When you have realized thus, just as they are the essentials of the three principal aspects of the path, resort to solitude. Resort to solitude and generate the power of effort to accomplish quickly your final aim, my child. So then you go and do long retreat, just like Lama Tsong Khapa did, to realize emptiness, by which, instead of just perceiving the body of Manjushri, you perceive the head as well. What a relief. So that he could directly communicate with the Buddha Manjushri, because he'd eliminated all the obscurations of his mind. That's all it takes. Questions, comments? Well, we need a strong sense of conventional self. Never, ever, like, I remember this this friend of mine was in a very, she got into one of those cults, and she was getting herself out of it. And I thought, this is not the time to talk about emptiness. This is the time to validate her sense of self, which was very fractured. So it's indeed right. To do any of this, we have to have a strong sense of self at the conventional level, because otherwise we chuck everything out, and that's not it. So what are we refuting is like how we perceive that self to exist, not that it exists, not that we exist. It's very clear, like Lama Zopa's book of How Things Exist, that sort of looks at this. Okay, well, a little bit of that. Thank you very much. We have completed the 3 principles of the path. Yay. Yeah, perfect. Well done, everybody. So, what was I going to say? So we do have well, actually this weekend we've got our cleaning, what we call working bee, cleaning working bee, 8 o'clock. Got lots of juices here for the heat. Anyone, all are welcome, anytime between 8 and 4, because then in the evening we have the Vietnamese
And don't feel that
visiting.
anyone can come. You don't need to stay all day, and there are some tasks that can be done sitting down. And there are some tasks that aren't directly clean.
Right. There's a variety of tasks. And of course, all of this before the arrival of Geshe Sharab, who will be coming next week and giving teachings here. So we look forward to that. Very much so.
And discovering Buddhism.
Yes, Intro to Tantra is continuing on Sundays. So we can turn to page 8 for the dedication verses. Gewadi no doja Lama Sangye no Byone Drowa Chikyang Mahaloka Nehi Sala Gopa Shojan Chup Sencho Grimbo Shema Kye Panam Kuchi Ke Panyam Pame Payam Gome Gondu Kawashu. Next, page 9. Pray for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, incomparably kind and supreme, Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang and father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gate through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings. You suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of things of the visions of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. And a long life prayer for Tenzin Usal Rinpoche. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Gantan tradition, essence of Buddha's teachings, foremost and holy Lama, to you who are supreme, we make this prayer of supplication. Lama, please, please live long.